founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network and on the board of the directors of Child Sharing, Inc. Rosalind's workshops and other programs inform, empower, and entertain. Our audience comes away with practical tools and spiritual insights they can immediately use to enhance their lives through more satisfying and rewarding personal and professional relationships. Welcome, Ros.
Thank you, Barbara. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Okay, this is a very special interview for me in particular because I've suffered as an addict's mom over the last, 4.5 years, and it is very, very traumatic, and I can't make sense of it at all. Until I started to speak to you about a spiritual side, of us, of all of us, a spirit, and to make sense of, why something would happen as traumatic as it happens in my family. And I always came to and asked you, why is my son an addict? Why does that make any sense? And you would always talk to me about his spirit and his soul making choices. So I really want to touch on that to begin with, because that was the only peace of mind I've ever had in this entire situation as an addict's mom, that my son came on this earth and chose to be an addict to learn lessons. Could you explain more?
Certainly, and thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome.
It seems to be, from my understanding and exploring years and years of studies, that life is like a school. It's all about mastering lessons and learning lessons, and that's how we really grow and mature and evolve into better and better people. And the only thing we are totally responsible for in our lives is ourselves and our choices. Our children are here for us to take care of, to nurture, and to parent in the best possible ways. And we're responsible for them in the physical and emotional ways that we understand parenting. But they came in with their own paths, their own choice of directions to move in. And on some level, their souls chose a path to come in on and lessons for them to learn themselves. And as hard as it is for us to watch when they're not making decisions that are in their best interest and that we know are not good for them, sometimes we have to just step back and watch, because it isn't all about us, it's all about them. So you can't take responsibility for your child's decisions much as you would like to. You want to protect them, and you want to love them and nurture them, and you want to keep them from any hurt and pain in life, and you're watching your child experience terrible consequences and making decisions that are going to be so hurtful for them, and yet on some level you're powerless to do anything. And it's very important to understand that you really are powerless on a certain level. You can't control the direction that they take in life, because they do have life lessons that they came in to learn, and we don't fully understand what those lessons are. It's extremely hard to understand it for ourselves. It's extremely hard to watch our children go through it, but when we do, we become better and stronger people. And there are 5 things in life that we have learned that we cannot change. And our own happiness really, depends on understanding those 5 things. These have been presented by many people. One of them is the author David Rishi. And the 5 things that never change are that everything changes and ends, whether it's good things or bad things. Things evolve and change and end. So nothing stays the same. The second is that life is not always fair. It just isn't. And if we're going through life looking for it to be fair and deliver fair outcomes for us, we're always setting ourselves up for disappointment, because it just doesn't work that way. The third is things do not always go according to plan. No matter how hard we work and contrive and manipulate and try to control our lives, we've all experienced that things don't go according to plan. And so on some level, we have to let go and release. The fourth is that pain is part of life. It just is. It enables us to enjoy the pleasures of life, because when we're not experiencing pain, we're able to really enjoy the opposite, which is happiness and pleasure. But pain is there, and there's not anything we can do about it sometimes. And the fifth thing that we cannot change in life is that people are not always loving and always loyal. And that can be very disappointing for us, of course. But when we come to understand these things, it helps move us out of that victim state, which is so common for addicts' moms, and it's such a detrimental state to be in. So when you're asking the inevitable question we've all asked ourselves, why is this happening to me? Why did this happen to my child? Why did this happen? It's not fair, or it shouldn't be this way. There's another way of positioning it, and an alternative way of looking at things. And that's what I'm going to suggest that everyone tries on for size. It's not always easy, and you may immediately just say, well, that's crazy. But think about it and give yourself an opportunity to digest the other question. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You could instead ask, why is this happening for me? When you ask, why is this happening for me, there's a world of difference in the questions. The first one has to do with being down the path of victimhood. Something happened to you, you're helpless, there's nothing you could do, you're powerless, and it's very, very painful to go through life feeling the weight of being out of control and powerless about things. And which is the way most parents are experiencing being an addict's mom. But if you ask, why is this happening for me, then it gets your mind thinking about other directions and other questions you could be asking yourself. And it leads you to a place where you can get a sense of deeper growth and awareness and appreciation and responsibility and even healing for your circumstances. You don't have to like what's happening to you in your life, and obviously no addict's mom does. But you can get a sense of appreciation, which means recognizing the value for it, recognizing that there are lessons there for you as well as for your child. So your child, you certainly can see lessons and consequences and teachings and experiences that they're getting, whether you like them or not. But you are also getting an opportunity to learn life lessons, and how you handle them is affecting your personal growth. So ask yourself, what am I learning through this experience? What is it forcing me to deal with? What is it forcing me to let go of? What is it making me have to heal in my relationship with myself, as well as my relationship with other family members and friends and co-workers and people in my life? All of these areas that are forcing you to confront issues in your life are building you up as a stronger person, as a more conscious and more aware person. And when you are, you actually become a better parent to your addict, because you're giving them more than just the poor me. Why did you do this to me? Why is this happening to us? Oh God, I can't stand this helplessness. And instead you're coming up with insights and awareness and more strength to cope and make better decisions as you're moving ahead in life. Does that make sense?
It's what makes sense to me is that you've done so much work and that you're so brilliant, and it makes sense to me. But on a certain level, I almost want to sit with you and go how am I supposed to figure out what I'm learning? And it's such a big price. And my son, now that I have to leave him on the street, it's like, how do you figure out? First of all, there's two parts I want to ask you. One is, I find as an addict's mother, and what I hear a commonality through many, many addicts' mothers, is that we feel guilty. I mean, I was young, I was stupid, I married a violent idiot, I was just, I could kill myself. If I could go back in my life, I would have been the parent that you are. You were amazing. Beautiful son. No, please, it's too hard.
Let's stop here and talk about the guilt first, because you brought up something so important. I could kill myself. A deep, deep feeling about guilt.
Yes.
Guilt assumes that you are responsible for your circumstances. And many addicts' moms have regrets about past decisions and behaviors that they should have made, they could have done it differently. And you may be responsible for some of the choices that your child made and have regrets. But when you feel the burden of guilt, it keeps you stuck, going nowhere. You just beat yourself and beat yourself and beat yourself.
Right.
And you're not recognizing that your addict also has to take responsibility for their reality. You did the best you could with what you knew, as does every parent. And there are many parents who certainly parented far worse than you. So it wasn't necessarily your parenting that created this addict. That's why you have to understand again, this soul came into this life with experiences to learn and hopefully overcome, and they're going through that. It isn't your responsibility that they became an addict. So if you take off some of the enormous weight of guilt and give yourself the freedom to be able to change what you can change and accept what you can accept and not grieve and beat yourself up about it, you are going to move ahead in a much more productive way for you, for your other family members, as well as for your addict. So guilt is what owns you. It keeps you stuck. It keeps you from being productive. It keeps you from enjoying your life. It keeps you from acknowledging the other things in your life that really are valuable and good and that you have done in a very positive way. All of that gets overshadowed by the guilt.
That's right.
And it isn't fair. It isn't fair to you. It's like a self-created imprisonment, like a dungeon of your own making, and you're living it. So the solution to guilt is forgiveness. And that's a word that's thrown around a lot, but it's a very important word, because by forgiving yourself, you're freeing, you're unlocking that dungeon. It doesn't mean that you're absolving yourself if you made certain mistakes in the past. You married the wrong man. You didn't do A when you should have done B. Those things are behind us. They happened, and they're true. But can you forgive someone else? Can you forgive a friend if they confided to you, this is what I did? Would you hate them forever? No, you would forgive them because you love them and you know that they have qualities that are far beyond these traits. You didn't do anything intentionally. You didn't purposely decide to hurt your child. And so by forgiving yourself and acknowledging that you did the best you could, you were helpless to change things in the past. If you knew better, you would have done better. You can move on. And you could move on out of the burden and the weight and the dungeon of guilt. And then you could work on forgiving your addict and other people in your life who may have caused harm and pain and other distress. And again, we don't forgive other people for their benefit. Forgiving doesn't mean we're absolving them of responsibility for the terrible pain they created and the decisions they made and the hurt they made. It's not saying they're exonerated. Forgiving means I release and let go of that emotional burden, that connection, because my heart can't take it any longer, and I'm going to cut the cord of feeling that pain, the pain of the guilt and the burden, and I forgive you. I release you to live your life and make your choices. I will continue to love you. I will continue to do everything possible I can for you. But I can't enable, I can't step up and do for you anymore because I've seen the terrible negative consequences of doing that. Mm-hmm. So that is the importance of understanding guilt and understanding forgiveness.
That is, I mean, you blow me away because I think, you know, there's such a commonality, like we just said about always on the Addict's Mom, people writing, I was a terrible mother, I used to get high, I did this, I married this violent man, you know, and I myself, you know, we've talked about so many times about the guilt, and I really truly do feel that there's like the little Barbara inside of me. I have to forgive her and I have to protect her. And you almost allow people, when you're really, really guilty, you allow people to almost abuse you because you almost feel you deserve it. And when you,
yes,
right, when you become, I've recently just started to understand that I have to respect and honor me, and not allow people to be a certain way to me. Although, 2 years ago, I certainly was the ultimate victim, or 3 years ago, and I would allow anybody to do anything, to me, because I didn't feel worthy. And today,
exactly.
I hurt tremendously. I mean, I've made a decision, it happens to be that the day we're in, I've made a decision to let my son go out to the street 2 days ago. And, it's funny, this interview is catching me at that particular moment in time, which is great because you've always been a tremendous mentor of mine. And I make that decision because of what you said, in a way that I've seen from rescuing so many times the consequences. My son is getting worse and worse and worse. But the fear, and I want to talk about fear, that's where I'm leading to. The fear of something happening to him is so great because, you got to remember,
yes.
Having your child on the street is to me one of my greatest fears in life. But I have to overcome the fear in order to see if that, if the consequences will offer change, will be part of the solution. And it's always like a last, thing you want to do, that you would ever do. I mean, I have friends who left their kids on the street who died. I have friends who left their kids on the street
yes.
with complete U-turn. So when you come to something like fear and you make a decision, like you said, at this point in life, knowing what I know today, you couldn't get me to do this 4 years ago if the world ended. I wouldn't do this. But knowing what I do today, I'm taking like a chance that maybe a few months of him not having me in his life and bouncing around and blah, blah, blah. Based on what I know, I'm doing what I can, like you said. Based on the knowledge I have today, making a decision based on that knowledge. How can addicts' mothers deal with that tremendous fear of not helping or not stepping in or letting your kid on the street or not enabling that comes with, oh my God, my kid may die?
Yes. And there's no doubt about it. It's the most tremendous fear imaginable.
It is.
You are at a life and death situation with your child. And that's why you have done what so many addicts moms have done for the last year after year after year.
4.5 years.
You do what you think, what a nurturing mother feels like she has to do. Save, rescue, jump in at the consequence of spending every last dime you own, sacrificing relationships with your husband and other partners, sacrificing the lives of your other children, your work, your employment, the sacrifices, the consequences of doing what you felt you should do are tremendous. And unfortunately, the outcome is that Daniel is right in the same place he was 2, 3, 4 years ago.
I have to just tell you.
Or worse, right.
Worse. He's 10 times worse.
So,
and I'm just telling you, I correct you because I haven't been updated you the last few weeks.
Yes.
But his condition has, I think just to add this in, go ahead. Go ahead, finish.
Well, let's just get to the crux of it. Knowing that you've done all that, and so has everyone else, and seeing that course doesn't work, we have to come back to the initial conversation, and that is asking yourself the question, instead of, why is this happening to my child? Ask, why is this happening for my child? What is it that my child needs to learn that he or she hasn't learned yet, but is there awaiting them? Some people get it and they turn around. You interviewed Tony, the athlete,
right,
who's written this wonderful book. Tony Mandarick, I think his name was, who's written this wonderful book. He was down on the bottom ground floor of life at the last point, and suddenly something clicked for him, and he decided to reach out for it. Your friend's child was out in the street, and then they died. This, unfortunately, is the most difficult situation a parent could watch their child in, but you are helpless to do anything about it. All you could do is make smart decisions for you and your family as a whole so that you're not sacrificing 5 other people on behalf of this one person. And it has to do with remembering that they have life lessons. At some point, and you can be reminding your child about why is this happening for them. Most of these children have self-esteem issues that go deep and go back for years and years and years. Many of them have some mental challenges and emotional psychological challenges that have compounded things and then combined with drugs make it a very difficult situation to deal with. Yet many go through rehabs and come out and they're changed for life, and others don't. There's a choice in there, and giving your child the freedom to make their life choice is one of the greatest gifts you can give them, even though it's the hardest gift you can. And that's already knowing that nothing else has worked. It's not like we have 5 or 6 good things out there and I'm saying, well, let's do this. We already know nothing else has worked. Nothing else is working. Money isn't the answer. Loving them more isn't the answer. And so ultimately talking to them when you do have conversations as responsible adults or as responsible children, depending on their age, and reminding them that they have choices in life and that there are consequences in life. And giving them the opportunity to experience the craziness that they fall into without being suddenly recovered, without being suddenly swept away out of their situation so that they get saved time and time again. The saving only postpones the inevitable. At some point, they just have to reach whatever bottom is for them and make a decision. And that's something that you can't do for them. And at the same time, you can be learning and doing valuable things in and with your life, which you personally, Barbara, have done. When you talk about yourself and diminish yourself as if you've been doing nothing but being a victim to your son, the reality is you made one of the smartest and most courageous decisions you made, starting the Addict's Mom, opening yourself to the world with candor and honesty, sharing your story and inviting other people to be with you on this journey. By opening this community, you have touched hundreds of thousands of people around the world, and other Addict's Moms can do that as well in their own way, whether it's sending a note to someone else they know who's in trouble, or going to a group and patting someone on the head and calling up a friend when you need them and being there when they need you. Community helps because we all understand one another and we're all there for one another. And you may not be able to immediately and directly help your addicts, your child, but you can make a positive difference in the world. You can also love and acknowledge your other children and family members who are going through hell, whether they tell you about it or whether they keep it in. They are going through hell, and that's an area that you could put your love and nurturing and attention back into the people in your family who are being penalized because they're well behaved, because they didn't give you problems. Right. Because they're sacrificing and because they're just moving along in the background. Those are the people who can be benefiting from all the love and energy and attention and money you have where you can do something positive. And let's just talk about one other facet, because the other side of guilt is anger and resentment. And if you're an addict's mom and you're not riddled with guilt, then chances are likely that you're riddled with anger and resentment for a good reason. So that's basically guilt turned outside. You just take all those emotions and you decide to really be angry at your addict, at the system, at the doctors, at the rehab, at the legal system. There's a multitude of places to feel anger and resentment. And that also, like guilt, keeps you from experiencing the present moment. Instead of focusing on what's going on now, your anger and resentment gets caught up in what happened in the past, and you relive it, and you relive it, and you relive it. And it's another tremendous burden that you're living with. Resentment can eat you apart, and it's affecting your health and well-being. Guilt and anger just gnaw away at your body, and it's affecting your personal health and well-being, your psyches, your ability to parent and be a wife and be the people that you want to be in all the other capacities of your life. So it's important that you're focusing on what can I do and what can I learn. You've learned lessons through being an addict's mom.
My God.
You may not be acknowledging it today, but you have learned tremendous lessons that you've shared with others very candidly. Invite others to share the lessons they've learned with one another. It'll strengthen the community, and it'll empower everyone to realize, I won't do that anymore. I made a decision. I will not fall prey to that anymore. I'm bigger than that. I deserve more. I deserve respect. If my addict isn't speaking to me respectfully, I won't allow them to talk to me. Those are all lessons you've learned. Those are empowering. Those are important. Those are valuable gifts for you. Life is about learning lessons and finding the gifts. And the more you focus on finding those gifts, the more peaceful you can be. You can't expect to be a happy addict's mom all the time, but you can be much more at peace. You could feel more confident that you are doing all you can do and that it's out of your hands because you brought in another soul, and that soul is a being, an entity who has a path to walk, and you can pray and you can be there for them when they're treating you in the way that you deserve. But when you're taking disrespect and when you're being abused and when you're being exploited, you are not doing any good for them any more than you are for yourself.
Right. You know, I what you said is, oh God, I mean, I could just listen to you for hours and hours and hours because your wisdom and love and the type of evolved person that you are and the way you handle your life, I've just nothing but the utmost respect for you. It's funny how you hit on like a few things that actually have happened in the last few months to me, things I would have never done. And what you've said today about the line that you used, it was not why did this happen to me, what is this here to show me, right? Is that the line? Am I correct? What is this here to show me?
Why did this happen? Why did this happen for me?
Why did this happen for me?
For me, but that's close to show me, so that's fine.
But, you know, it's funny.
Yes. For me.
For me, okay. Why did this happen for me? It's funny because just recently, I have 2 addicted children, and one of them is in recovery for 2 years, and I made many, many excuses for the way he can be somewhat disrespectful at times. I would always think to myself, you know, I don't want him to go back to going on drugs, you know, so I don't want to hurt him or upset him. So I really, in a sense, took a lot of his attitude. And just recently, he gave me, he had stayed with me for, a few days and blah, blah, blah. And he kind of got very uppity in attitude. And I really stood up for myself. For the very first time, I said to him, you can't speak to me this way anymore. You cannot take, I won't be treated with disrespect. And him and I have not spoke now for about a week. Normally, I would say to myself, oh, why are you aggravating him? You know, he did drugs. He might go back to drugs. Like, don't do this. Don't hold him accountable. And the same with my other son who is deeply in his addiction. Things like, I lost my phone and you know what'll happen if I don't have a phone. Or I lost my music and I would replace it. Or he would do something and I'd immediately, because I would say, oh my God, it would always be over my head that if I didn't do this or I didn't do that, then you know the outcome. I'm going to go on drugs, instead of doing
guilt.
Right. And I feel that the proud part of my life that I'm very grateful for is that I'm very driven, and I've always believed that in sharing there's so much power. But I have grown a long way as far as through your help and people like yourself, understanding that I'm not doing anyone a favor. If I'm allowing bad behavior, if I'm picking up the pieces, if I'm rescuing all the time, I'm doing such a disservice to myself and to them.
Yes. And it's important to remember to yourself. The disservice to yourself is far greater than to them, because it is eating away at your psyche. It is moving you from being a confident, vibrant person and beating yourself up. It's putting you in that dungeon with the whip every day. No matter how you get out there in your work and you shine, come home and you beat yourself up with the whip every day. And that's for actions from 10, 20 years ago that you're still beating yourself about. So when will you give yourself the reprieve and free yourself from that dungeon?
Well, there's way more to that dungeon, and I'm going to be really honest, because most addicts' moms will not be really honest. When you're in that guilt mode, especially in the beginning, and I pray that if another mother today finds out her child's addicted, she hears me. What we do many times, addicts' mom, is we self-medicate. We do things that are really bad for ourselves. We drink probably more than we should. We take sleeping pills bad for us. We go on this victim, which I've recently just gotten out of, like so much of this, because I wasn't treating myself as somebody important. It didn't matter. I almost wish that I just didn't have to be here to watch this. It was so painful, and wasn't getting the help I needed. I wasn't going to, to me, there are certain people who can go to Al-Anon, they love it, and it's great, and it helps them. But I need help more from people like you, who are spiritual, who I admire, who I learn from. And I think that it is so deep, the pain many of the mothers of addicted children go through, that they harm themselves in ways that are unimaginable. And that is why what you're saying, when will you get out of the dungeon? When will you say, you know what, I'm important? When will you say I'm deserving? When will you say, I'm not going to hurt me? And I think I'm beginning to see that, even though on the outside, really, I look really successful to the entire world. I know that. But on the inside, over these years, I wasn't being successful. I was being hurtful to me. Really, I almost imagine now, like the little girl inside of me, who I didn't protect. Or I let everybody just, feel guilty, beat up. And today, recently, in the last 2 months, I've just been thinking about, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to yourself? Don't you matter? Don't you, and people would say to me, oh my God, Barbara, you've changed the world. Look what you've done. Look what you've accomplished. My God. But still, it was only, but look what I did to my kids. Look, I was a bad mother. I married a bad man. Look what I did. Look what I did. Look what I did. And us is that voice that it's always us that beats ourselves up. It's we always.
Yes.
Did you ever have a fight with somebody and you became really nasty, let's say, and probably you didn't because you're just amazing, but okay, if I would have a fight, let's say with somebody, and let's say I would become really nasty, with somebody, I would say, okay, well, F you or this and that, or be really mean. Initially, I would probably say to myself, you know what, they deserved it. And then maybe a couple hours later, I would say, yeah, they deserved it, but I might have, said something different. And then hours after that, I would probably say, they deserved it, but, I was really a little bit of a jerk. And by the end of the night, I'm sitting there going, my God, Barbara, do you have lessons to learn? Eat myself. And that's basically the story in life. You can't do wrong things. You can't allow yourself to be hurt. You can't hurt other people and not beat yourself up. And addicts' mothers are almost in a position where it becomes so easy to use that. I'm drinking too much because. I'm eating too much because. I'm hurting myself because. Nobody else matters because. So what I'm essentially saying...
Go
ahead.
There's one more point that I think is related to this that's important to discuss, and that is when you have a dynamic of two people, all you need is for one person to change and that dynamic shifts. Mm-hmm. So if you keep doing what you've been doing, the addict will keep behaving the way they're behaving, and you sort of have a thing going. There's a dynamic. There's a way that your energy works, good or bad. If one of you shifts, and it's going to have to be you because you're the one who's sober and aware and alert, and everything in life is about awareness. We don't make changes without awareness first. Once you get an awareness, an aha moment of something that we talked about today and saying, wow, I'm going to change that. I'm not going to buy into that anymore. I'm not going to feel that way, whatever it is. When you make that shift, the addict will shift as well. You're not doing it for that purpose. You're doing it for you.
Right.
But the addict will shift as well because they can't play the same games with you. And it forces them to be more mature or more responsible or more caring or whatever happens. It sort of forces them to be that way because you're not going to take garbage from them anymore. You're not going to be abused. Mm-hmm. You're not going to buy into the old stories. You're not going to play games anymore. Basically, it's been a game. It's a funny way to think about it, but it's a game of life that the two of you are playing and maybe more involved. 4, 5, 10, it doesn't matter. Everyone's playing this game with the addict at the center. And by pulling out any one person who changes their energy and changes the pattern of how they behave, it stops the whole dynamic, and the addict has to align themselves as well. It's just like when you have people leaning on each other. If you have two people who are leaning on each other and one person becomes leaning more and the other one is carrying that burden, if the other person pulls away, the one who's been doing all the leaning falls in their face. If the person who's been leaned on starts straightening up and saying, I'm not going to accept any more than my fair burden in life and I'm taking responsibility for myself more and loving myself more, it forces the other person to straighten up whether they like it or not. So everything is shifting. So as a mom, you have the power, and that's something you feel you never realized. You have the power to change your life, your decisions, your reactions, your behaviors, the way you look at things, the questions you ask yourself, especially if you start saying, why is this happening for me? Mm-hmm. Where is the gift in this? Where is the good lesson? How have I strengthened? How have I become a better mom? Those kinds of questions. And that's empowering. And when you get more feeling that, you're less likely to be abused and being taken advantage of like you were. So it all falls together. And then, of course, getting a system behind you, getting people that you trust in rehab or in therapists or whatever path you happen to be on. That groups, of course, of any kind, any support system that you can get, of course, is very important, or personal coaching. But the important thing is to do it for you first, and things will change. The energy changes with you. It's going to change the energy in every dynamic connected to you, and your family will thank you for that.
You know, I think that you have made some amazing points. I'm going to watch this over and over and over and over because I just enjoyed speaking with you so much. I have one last question in closing. Your take on it. Okay. And this is a little off topic, but I really do want to ask this question. Now that I've made the decision to leave my son out, and let's say it goes the other way, and let's say he dies or gets killed, how would an addict's mom think of that? How should I think of it if that does happen? Like, how would you think of it? Like, God forbid. Like, if that was the price that I paid. That's it. That's the question.
You have to be able to let go and know that you did the best you can, and this was a circumstance beyond your control. Because if you let that own you, the grief of that can stay with you forever. Okay. And I've seen people carrying on grief
forever.
And feeling that if they enjoy a moment of life after a child dies or someone close to them dies, and if they have a moment of enjoyment, they feel guilty that they're doing something bad. The truth is, your son, who we know really does love you, he's an addict and he is caught up in something that he doesn't understand. You know that your son would want you to be happy. And if he passed away either through some poor decision he made or through some crazy accident or whatever happened, it was never the essence of him who was intentionally doing that. But if that happened, he would want you to be happy. He would want you to be relieved. He would want you to move on in life. And he would want you to not feel guilty, because no mother has been more loving, more caring, more devoted, more sacrificing than you. No. The fact that it didn't work means that's not the answer to go. But you did it. You were that. You are that. And all the mothers who are listening are loving addicts moms. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be connected to your website and all the work that you're doing. These are devoted mothers who love and care for their children. But they are not responsible. You are not responsible for the decisions your addicted child makes. You have done everything you can. You will continue to do everything you can. But should the worst possible thing happen, you have to absolve yourself of responsibility. Right. These are souls who made those decisions. Those are the consequences. And everyone around in your family is learning lessons as a result of being part of this. So there are always lessons to be learned. We need to be looking for them. Okay. Thank you so much. I so enjoyed this interview. Where would people find out more about you and your services? Because you do so many other things as well. Could you give us a little bit of... They can email me at Rosalind, ROSALIND, Writes, WRITES, @gmail.com, and I'm happy to talk to them about my coaching services and other work that I'm doing. And that would really be the best way of contacting me at this point, because I don't have a website up about this. I'm very involved with helping families with divorce, if they have children, helping them make the best decisions on behalf of the children. So I have my childcentereddivorce.com website. And, of course, any addicts, moms who are divorced, I have tons of free, valuable resources there and various courses and programs that I've provided. So there's a wealth of information there.
And you have the same attitude, which I wish I knew you back when I got divorced, which you successfully did such an amazing job with your own divorce. And whereas one of the points in closing, I know that most people that get divorced, we become enemies, we fight each other, we must kill each other, and then our children suffer greatly. So when we continue, I definitely plan on interviewing you a lot more. I would like to, you to share with us in maybe our next interview that, that whole concept, because many addicts mothers are divorced, on what all of that, back and forth does to the kids. And I know.
And
go ahead.
And it includes forgiveness.
Exactly.
And self-esteem and the same kinds of things we're talking about. And it really makes a difference in co-parenting effectively, after a divorce, and honoring yourself as well as your former spouse and as well as the children that you love so much.
Right. And I can't wait to talk more about that. But I thank
Terrific.
you. I think it was a phenomenal interview, and I really appreciate it. Oh, I hope you guys.
Thank you, Barbara. I love the work you're doing.
Thank you so much.